Hello, welcome to the Turret of Pleasure here in the Enchanted Kingdom of Hermione. I'm your host and the Lord Chamberlain of the Enchanted Kingdom. I keep saying Chancellor. That would be only if I was German. No, the Lord Chamberlain of the Enchanted Kingdom. And we're sitting here watching ships sink and planes crash, and we're listening to Miles Davis, as is our wont. And we're taking a stroll through all the box sets that came out after Miles died. CBS Legacy, scraping the barrel hard. But what a barrel! My God! And they went through basically his entire career at Columbia with a fine-tooth comb. And they've extracted, well, first of all of the albums, remastered, beautiful sound, all of the outtakes, many alternate takes. And they've pretty much, they completed the whole thing basically from when he signed with Columbia in the mid-50s until he went into cocaine-induced retirement in the mid-70s. And they've covered all the studio records and a lot of the live records. But they stuck to the studio stuff. Seven Steps to Heaven box had some live stuff on it because otherwise they wouldn't have been able to put Sam Rivers in the boxes. And Sam Rivers is an interesting footnote in the Miles Davis story. But there are many people who are interesting footnotes to the Miles Davis story. And some of them you kind of forget about. And a great example was once Bitches Brew came out, his band was sort of fluid. And he played the Isle of Wight. He played, his band was Chick Corea, Dave Holland, Tony Williams. And then sax player Wayne Shorter quit. Steve Grossman showed up, played for a while. And he put out once Bitches Brew sold really well. They just put out a blizzard of product. And a lot of it was a real mishmash chronologically. And so they put out Bitches Brew, sold like crazy. They put out Live at the Fillmore, which was problematic because it was edited together. Each side was an evening. And some of the edits were a bit jarring. I get what they were trying to do. They were trying to put an entire evening of music into one LP length side. It's okay, but the transitions are kind of klutzy, and it's also pretty avant-garde. It's like it didn't sell anywhere near as well. I actually have a 7-inch single culled from the Fillmore record, which you think, wow, what radio station is going to play this? But, okay. And then they put out, I'm not sure the order of this now, but Jack Johnson came out, and somewhere around here, the album came out called Live Evil. Now, Live Evil was a weird one because it consisted of tracks from about 69, a couple of tracks with Hermeto Pascoal, the Brazilian composer, very quiet, meditative tracks, not very long. A little bit of stuff with Joe Zawinul, and John McLaughlin, I believe. And then, but the majority of Live Evil was taken from a concert, I believe in 1970, where he played a gig at the Cellar Door. And he did a week there, I believe it was. And they played a few nights with his then band, which was, I better get this right, seeing as I'm doing a review of it, but his then band was, he had Airto on percussion, Jack DeJohnette on drums, Michael Henderson had joined on bass, electric bass, here we go. This will tell me what I need. Yeah, Gary Bartz. That was the one I was a little unsure of. there are 4 nights worth of concerts on this box set. The Cellar Door Sessions 1970. Now this is a curious one because it's not exactly like the metal clip box sets. It's sort of like the metal clip box sets, but not exactly. You can't see this because it's too clever. Maybe I'll try and shine it. But there's a groovy little shiny thing. Now this series of nights was really interesting because by this point, Keith Jarrett was the only keyboardist in the band. Yeah, you get 5 versions of directions on this, and you get, but what you really get that I'm really happy about is you get 4 versions of What I Say, and What I Say is probably the best example of what this band was about. Kind of a funky groove. Miles plays probably as well as he ever played in this box set. But it's a little, the live Evil performances that drew from this are all from the 19th, the last night. And the reason that the 19th is special is because for the final night, Miles called in old buddy John McLaughlin and said, "We really need an extra element in our sound. Can you come down and sit in with us?" And so McLaughlin duly did, and it really did make a difference. Because not that there's anything wrong with the previous 3 nights, they're great. But McLaughlin just added that fire. And if you can find the live Evil version of What I Say, what you're going to hear, and that really sums up the whole box for me, what you hear is funky intro, groove, Michael Henderson just throwing it down, Jack DeJohnette playing his best kind of funky jazz groove, and they just sort of, just the 2 of them start the song off. And then Keith Jarrett comes in with his Fender Rhodes. Now, Keith Jarrett writes an amazing liner note on this, which I really like. Because Keith Jarrett, if you know Keith Jarrett at all, is famous for his dislike of electronic instruments. One of his great quotes is, "Electricity is in all of us. So we don't need to..." Look at Michael Henderson. Look how young he was in this. He was just a little kid. He played with Aretha, played with Stevie Wonder, you know. And he was the guy. He was the guy who really, more than anybody, changed the course of this band. When they went from Dave Holland, who did play some electric bass, but he's more comfortable and adept on the acoustic bass. Michael Henderson wouldn't know an acoustic bass if he dropped one on his foot. And that's what Miles wanted. So there's a liner note here entitled "What Miles Wanted" by Keith Jarrett. And it's great in that he's unapologetic. There's a great thing in here. Where is this? He says he doesn't have time to write, but here he is writing. There's a great description of his setup here somewhere. Now, oh, I wish I could find it. Wow, Keith said he was going to work with Jimi Hendrix on a project. All right, here we go. You don't usually live to see this kind of comet go by more than once or twice in a lifetime, and I don't really care what people think. They should call the music on these recordings. I had more gripes than anyone with those pieces of shit electric toy instruments. Speaking of which, after Korea left the band, Miles asked me which one I wanted. They were both on stage, and I said, well, I better try them both. So I put them in a V in front of me and pretended I could make them disappear by making them into a newer and better instrument, playing them simultaneously and often in unison in a heroic effort to be playing that instrument that Miles knew I should have been playing all along. Now, the instruments in question were a Fender Rhodes, which was apparently broken, and a Fender combo organ. And I can hear you saying, wow, wait a minute, Fender didn't make combo organs, and you'd be right. They were Italian organs that were made and badged for Fender during the swinging 60s. And it's a really I sympathize with Mr. Jarrett. You go from playing Becksteins and Steinways and Bosendorfers to an Italian combo organ badge with Fender. That is going to be traumatic. And in addition, this is in a small club. He's playing through what I'm going to guess is a guitar amp. And it's turned up really fucking loud, so the amp is distorting. I think this sounds amazing. It's the greatest Fender Rhodes sound anybody's ever got. It has meat on its bones. The solo he plays in What I Say is transcendent. He's playing 4 solos at the same time, and it's all chords and licks. It's just again, try to find What I Say from Live Evil. It starts with the Miles solo that's, in my opinion, the greatest Miles solo ever. He hits notes that bats can't hear. And he's really in good form. Just fit as a fiddle, playing his guts out. This leads into a solo by John McLaughlin, which is one of those great early McLaughlin solos. He didn't have all the pedals. He didn't have the double neck guitar. None of this crap. He's just playing through an amp that he dragged down to the gig. And he's as good as McLaughlin gets. I love John McLaughlin's playing, particularly before he added the name Mahavishnu in front of his, because then he got into Marshalls and things. This is a little bit less processed sounding, a little cleaner, a little pickier, and it just means that the millions of notes he plays are much more articulated than they were later. A fabulous solo, just blows my mind, which then leads into a solo by Keith Jarrett that it's so intense that it just explodes. Uh-oh. There's a security breach. The Admiral is telling me about it. At any rate, and then it goes into, sadly, then this is why it's not an A++. It then goes into what is a very long, sort of chaotic drum solo by Mr. Jack DeJohnette. And Jack DeJohnette is an amazing drummer. I love him so much. But this solo overstays its welcome. Maybe they were off taking a pee. Who knows? One of the great features of this that wasn't on Live Evil is, and I'm sure this is because Keith is alive, but you'll note on disc 1 there's directions written by Joe Zawinul. Yesterday Now, What I Say, and then improvisation number 1, Keith Jarrett. Now, disc 2, improvisation number 2 by Keith Jarrett. Disc number 3, oh, no, wasn't one there. Disc number 4, improvisation number 3 by Keith Jarrett. Disc number 5 and disc number 6, improvisation number 4 by Keith Jarrett. So Keith gets his own writing credits for what are essentially his little solo spots where the whole band would lay out. And he would just go nuts on the roads, mostly on the roads. And it's transcendent. It's really too bad that Keith hated the electric keyboards so much, because he was a wizard on them. He was just really, my favorite Keith Jarrett is him on Fender Rhodes. And if you watch the Isle of Wight video, which is now available everywhere, you'll notice, the gearheads like me will notice, that the poor guy is saddled with an RMI electric piano, and I have one of these in my storage container, and that's where it's going to stay, because it's the most useless piece of shit keyboard ever made by anybody. It's awful. And there he is, Keith Jarrett, trying to play this fucking thing. You gotta feel bad for the guy. So I can't not believe that he was traumatized by these horrible instruments. And one wonders what he would have done if you gave him a proper modern digital piano or something, he'd probably still hate it. But a prickly character, but a great musician. And this is his finest moment in the Miles band. Airto is brilliant on this. Airto is another favorite, really like the guy. Dejanet was in this band quite a bit, and for the most part did really well. Dejanet is hard to beat. He brings something to every session he plays on. Did a lot of ECM records and helped make them less, ECM, if you will, less pastoral. Adds a little bit of grit, a lot of swing, a lot of ping in the cymbals. Fabulous drummer. Michael Henderson, this was really, Jack Johnson was the beginning for Michael Henderson. This is immediately after. And Michael Henderson was to stay on until the retirement. And a really good bass player. His solo records are garbage. Mind you, find the cover for Slingshot and laugh. But yeah, he's the guy that turned Miles from an avant-garde free jazz kind of sound into a funky African-American jungle sounds, if you will. And he was the main factor, I think, in getting Miles into what ended up being his final band before his retirement, which was the Pete Cozy, Reggie Lucas, Al Foster, Ntume, Dave Liebman band, which I love so much. They're my favorite band. At any rate, this came out. When did this come out? I've never looked this stuff up before. I should. This came out not too long ago, actually. Well, let's find out. Oh, 2005. Okay. They were confused in the packaging. They didn't really know what they were doing. But they were going to stay with this type or go to something slightly cheaper. I suspect this one didn't sell as well as the others because after this box came out, they realized that it was kind of a law of diminishing returns. And the subsequent boxes that came out, which we will cover, had cheaper packaging, which is kind of too bad, but it meant that they were cheaper to buy. This was $100 to buy it for 6 CDs. Yeah, worth every nickel. If you like Electric Miles, this is absolutely fantastic. It's like the Plug Nickel, where they recorded, the Columbia engineers showed up and recorded every note. And we are the gladder for that because there's a lot of really good music here. And if you're like me, immersed in Live Evil, which is a record I have something like 5 copies of because I have 3 of them in quadraphonic. It's hard to go to the other ones. They seem like they're missing something, which of course they are. They're missing John McLaughlin. But once you can kind of acclimatize yourself to the fact that John wasn't actually in this band, he was just a guy sitting in. Oh, there goes the stack. It's a really good band. And to have been there when this was being recorded would have been something else. This is an A+ box. You'll notice I have it in a bag. It's a white. You can't really even see it maybe, but it's got this sort of very hard to see design on it. And this is, if I remember correctly, the most easily stained material. Let's see. Yeah, oh God, yeah. Don't even breathe on it, it'll get dirt. So I've had to do that, which is kind of annoying, but whatever. Pretty sure this is out of print now. I don't think it sold that well. If you like Live Evil, you want to hear this. If you like John McLaughlin, you want to hear this. If you like Keith Jarrett, you want to hear this. If you like Jack DeJohnette and the Airto, you want to hear it. Gary Bartz is really good on this. He lasted maybe a year in this band. And he was a little bit, the only complaint I have about Gary Bartz is he sounds a little bit like the guys that surrounded him. Dave Liebman, Steve Grossman, John Stubblefield, guys like that. But he holds his own quite nicely and does a very good job. The only saxophonist of this era that I really love is Sonny Fortune, who only plays on he plays on a couple of gigs in Japan. And Dave Lieben, who, you know, does a great job as well. Um, but there you have it. It's excellent. It's an A plus. I love it, and it's worth buying for the Jarrett improvisations and just for the alternate takes of everything that's on Live Evil. Um, like I say, the only knock is that the Live Evil versions, for the most part, are probably the best versions. Although that's debatable too. They're the ones I'm most used to, and that's kind of weighs it in that favor. At any rate, there you have it. Thanks for watching. There goes the Britannic. There goes the plane. I guess it's time to go out into the world, and see if I can find some new music to review. There's a lot more of these to come, don't worry. Miles Monday. I am that sucker, and I bought all of these. All the box sets, every one of them. Even ones that I wouldn't normally have bought. But for whatever reason, the circumstances fell into place where I could buy them without pain. This one I bought for full pop. I'm glad I did. Bought it the day it came out. Worth every nickel. And, yeah. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit the notification button. Take care of each other. Wear your mask if you have to. I know some people don't want to do that, but, you know, think about everybody else. I don't like wearing a mask at all, but I do it because that tells the rest of the world I care about them, which I think is important. And so much for all that. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you later. Take care.